I want you to get together.
All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I got a great guest for you today. I'm with Paul Stobbs with Understanding Conspiracy. And what's really putting Paul Stobbs out there right now, how I saw you on Eddie Bravo's show. Actually, Eddie Bravo sent me the link, and I watched it and I was like, whoa, man, this is crazy. Could it be that we're living in the little season right now? And that's the big question. Most people I talk to, Paul,
Mhm.
are saying that we're living in Revelations right now, which kind of seems like it to me because everything's being revealed and exposed. But before we get into that, Paul, thank you so much for joining me, man.
No problem. It's good to be here. Yeah, I talked with Eddie, maybe 2 months ago now, a month ago, something like that. And that was quite serendipitous. A random subscriber of mine said, "Oh, I know Eddie. Do you want to talk to him?" And he just got it together. And next thing I know, 2 days later, we're talking to each other. Then a month later, Eddie's messaged him and he's like, "Man, I've got like a short clip that explains everything. I'm talking to Joe Rogan tomorrow." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Just take something from my channel." Next thing I know, he's showing Joe Rogan me rambling on about this idea. And
I think it's
yeah.
epic, man. It's to me, it's a groundbreaking. I mean, a lot of people out there. I have a huge Christian audience,
Mhm.
like a real big Christian audience. So they're either gonna like this or hate it, right? Everyone
Well,
has their own view
that's
and
true.
how they interpret the Bible, and that's just the way it's been forever.
Mhm.
But I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because I just feel like I don't know. I don't know, and I like to. I don't like to leave any stone unturned. I like to explore all avenues, and this makes a lot of sense to me because I'll be honest with you, man. I'm looking at. I watch a lot of stuff from the 1800s, right? And Wild West stuff or the Old
Mhm.
West, and I'm like, man, they were on a horse and buggy, and they were like dying of gunshot wounds. I mean, just dying of everything, pneumonia, whatever. I mean, they were just their life expectancy was 30 years old. You were an old man.
Mhm.
And then you look at these cathedrals and these churches that were built, and I'm like, whoa, 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 time out.
Mhm.
They didn't build that. That's impossible. They were in horse and buggy. There's some very confusing stuff going on here. We
Absolutely.
got history all wrong.
It seems that way, doesn't it? It's funny because you say, America's like in this expanding brand new country, and like I said, that you're going out west, you're dying of dysentery along the way, and your numbers are dwindling, and it's kind of you're escaping an oppressive monarchy type of situation. You want little small government, you know what I mean? But while we're at it, let's build an enormous 200 pillared government building while we're at it that could house 600 to 800 people for
Makes no sense.
a tiny little village of 40.
You know,
It makes no sense. You're right.
it
Yeah.
doesn't. And there's a church in Santa Fe, and I forgot the name of the church, but it's the Winding Staircase. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Winding Staircase, 33 steps.
I think I've seen
Uh,
that. Yeah.
a mysterious guy came in. The nuns were praying for a staircase or something. He
Hmm.
made it without any rails. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just a staircase winding up like this out of wood, and it
Hmm.
looks like just one solid piece of wood. Nobody till this day knows how this man built this. And it's an
Inspired is the word. You look at some of these things and the way they've just intricately carved into the stones all around them. And you look at this and you think, well, yeah, these people had time and skill, which they shouldn't have had according to the official narrative. And they made some truly beautiful things. That the only word is inspired. Like something was running through these people that just made them care about beauty in a way that even we don't do today. We build cubes, with no detail
yeah.
whatsoever. We're more practical, and we're utilitarian. It has to just be functional, not beautiful. And these people were making their drain pipes have dragon mouths at the end. These people were going into hyper details in places that are just not necessary monetarily or in any way, shape, or form. You would just leave it by today's standards. And we're
Even
supposedly
when
the most advanced part of humanity today. But I think these people during these times, yeah, they had a different view than us, and we'll get into today possibly what that's all about because it goes deep when you really start looking into these things.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the pyramids, or when I was in Chichen Itza, even on the Mayan pyramids, I was like, there's no way to understand how they built these things. We couldn't do it today.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're in the park in Chichen Itza and you clap your hands, it echoes throughout the whole park.
Mm-hmm.
It shoots off through all the pyramids. And although that was to me, that's lost knowledge in itself. But this, to me, what you're going to talk about today really grabbed my attention when I watched it on Eddie Bravo because I was like, man, this makes a lot of sense. And I was kind of uneasy hearing it because I was like, man, could it be? Could it really be? So I'm going to let you have the floor and just start where
Sure.
you want to go with this. and just take it for where you think this is the proper place to start.
Sure. So just as like a caveat to anyone listening, a Christian audience especially, look, we're not saying we have all the answers here. What I'm about to say is 100% ironed out truth fully. But what we're finding is through our research over the past couple of years to about 5 years is more things are compounding on top of each other, which are backing up this idea in a real, tangible way. And yes, it's going to go against pretty much everything you've learned in church and what predominantly is taught to mainly mainline evangelical Christians in America of what we call the futurist doctrine. This is not going to gel with that at all. And before you call me a heretic and start throwing whatever anathema verbiage at me that I'm no longer welcome in the church or whatever you want to say, primarily the forefront of this research and the evidence we have is not buildings or anything Tartaria related, although that is fascinating and certainly attaches to all this, is the words of Jesus Christ himself. And I profess with my heart and my soul, Jesus Christ is King of Kings, Lord of Lords, full stop. This is not about changing the gospel. This is not about making people lose their salvation. This is about bringing people closer to God and understanding truth. And if you're a conspiracy theorist like me, especially a Christian conspiracy theorist, you know we've been lied to about everything from every possible angle, and that includes medical institutions, historical institutions, media institutions, academic institutions. Name an institution or something that has years of academia behind it and evidence. We know they've corrupted all of it. So you better believe that the church teachings in the main seminary schools have also been corrupted to some extent, especially if we're living in what I believe to be the little season of Satan mentioned in Revelation chapter 20, verse 7. Now, a lot of people don't know about this because you're not taught this in church. Most people, actually, when I start discussing this, don't even realize this is even a thing. But it's right there in your Bible. So this is biblically grounded research, and somebody has to live during this time. It could be us. So there's like my basic introduction just to help people understand who I am and where I'm coming from with this. And, just keep an open mind, like you said yourself. It could be possible. You need to be prepared for any eventuality. I know we all believe tribulation's coming upon us now and we're waiting for Christ to return, but there's mounting evidence, if just through observation alone and the words of Christ himself, that he may have already returned and established a 1,000-year reign on earth, which has been covered up. So your history books aren't going to tell you about this. But I believe the words of Christ over the history of man personally. So there's a caveat, and I'll give it back to you.
Okay, so that makes, to me, this actually makes a lot of sense. And if we have this like amnesia, all of us have this historical. Nobody really knows what has happened in our past. I definitely don't believe in evolution. I'm going to say that right now. I can't buy it. It just, it doesn't make any, it used to make a lot of sense to me, but where did I learn it? Well, in the indoctrination camps. I think NASA has been lying to everybody. I don't believe the moon landing. That right there, I'm sorry. You lie once to me, I don't believe anything you're going to say.
Absolutely.
And I know the Vatican is hiding, troves of documentation, troves of biblical scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I'm sure what we're reading in the Bible is truth, but it's only this much of it to me. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more that needs to be uncovered, and there's a lot more they're hiding, which makes sense to me that we really could be living in the little season.
Yeah, you've said it. You've hit the nail on the head already there, and I feel like, in a way, talking to you today, I'm probably preaching to the choir, to somebody who's open to the idea that we've been lied to, and we can only work backwards from what Christ told us was the truth. If you believe he is the truth, the way, and the life, then we have to take his word at face value, So maybe we should just start with the scripture. Usually I end with the scripture, but let's just start with the scripture, and we'll work backwards from the things we were told by Christ himself. There's a wonderful book. I did promote it on and read it on Eddie's channel. I didn't write this, but I have read it on my channel. He's a member of our little community online. He's a British guy like me. He wants to remain anonymous, so he goes by the name Jesus Kept His Word. And you get this on Amazon for like $5, $3. It's really cheap. And it's only 50 pages, but it's basically an introduction to concept book that just lays out everything flat out. So I'd recommend anybody who wants to go do some reading after this, get this book to get yourself really understanding the basics to this premise. And this is making waves. This guy sold like 3,000 copies since I did it a few months ago.
And they could just get it on Amazon?
Yeah, really cheap. Just type in The Return of Jesus and where we are now on the biblical timeline. Jesus Kept His Word. You'll find it. It's right there. And it's usually recommended next to my book, funnily enough. The Nephilim look like clowns. So you'll see them next to each other. You see this image behind me, you'll see this probably being advertised right next to it. So there you go. There's something people can get their sink their teeth into after this. But let's just get into the words of Jesus Christ. And I do have my own little Word document, something I've been using for quite a while now, that just compiles the scripture first.
Are you going to share the screen?
I can share the screen if you want to. Yeah, sure. So
I think it'd be easier for my audience if you could just show it.
Absolutely. So let me just get
let you do it.
The millennial reign evidence up first. And this document it's a hodgepodge slapped together. It's one of those things only I can understand it and get to where I need to go, because it's just a random slapped together bunch of stuff. So anyone asking me for this document, I'm not going to send it to you for that reason. But everything I'm going to quote is in this book anyway. So I'll just say that. But I do have something I can share with you here. So let's go to the bottom, screen share, and I'll share this with you. And can you see this?
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. Yes, this is just a quick document I've thrown together, just slapping together the main verses that just make it very clear the time we're actually living in, and what the people living in the time of Jesus and just after his ascension, after Pentecost, what the apostles believed was coming right around the corner in their lifetime. Okay, so Matthew 16:28. Verily I say unto you, there will be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So this is Jesus Christ talking to his apostles, making it very clear. Some of you will still be alive by the time I come back.
And he's talking to them. He's saying, some of you, there will be some of them that stand here which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. So
yes,
that's pretty blatant.
Yes. So what happens is, and this is where the sneakiness comes into modern dispensationalist, futurist eschatology and reinterpretations, which mainly come from the footnotes of the Schofield Bible, by the way, which is only from the 1800s. And he was actually funded by the Rockefellers or the Jesuits, I think. So the whole thing's really dodgy. But what the mainline Christianity is waiting for is Christ to still return with his kingdom to establish a millennial reign. There's also a bit of a new doctrine of people are going to get raptured just before the bad stuff happens, and then they'll get to come back down and be on the millennial kingdom and be kings and rulers with Christ. But this has all happened already, and we'll get into it. So the people living in Jesus' time, they were pretty certain he made the promise to them, not us 2,000 years in the future. But we have done this odd mental gymnastic reinterpretation. And when you look into the history of how, it's very dodgy. But we believe today in mainline Christianity, for some reason, he was talking about us. And it'll be the generation it happens to that see these signs that this will happen to. But I believe Christ was talking to the people right in front of him, and he was saying it to them, not through them to us, through the scriptures being written down after the fact 2,000 years later. When you really think about it, that actually sounds pretty ridiculous. So I'm going to take it at word value, and that's all we're doing here. We're taking scripture at face word value.
And can I say this, Paul? This has always confused me, this subject, because I've always thought, man, it sounds like he's talking to them.
Exactly.
He's not talking to people 2,000 years later, because this is the one part of the Bible where I'm like, what do you mean? Why didn't you say generations to come? Then you said it to them. You said it point blank to them. You're Jesus Christ. I'm taking you at your word.
Well, those people would have been very disappointed with their savior if we go off what we believe today predominantly. It's like it's almost as though he lied to them, and I'm not going to make my Lord and Savior a liar. I think he kept his word. I think he was telling these people the truth, and I think these people got their rewards, and they were resurrected not long after their death, and they ruled as saints and kings and priests with Christ for 1,000 years on earth, right after tribulation, which we'll get into in the timeline and everything soon. But let's just get this scripture. So it kind of repeats itself in the Synoptic Gospels. So we have Mark 9:1. It's some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of God come with power. Matthew 10:23. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. So he's saying, just keep fleeing persecution. When they start killing you, basically, just move to the next city. Eventually, you won't get through many before I come back. So that's pretty imminent language, It's just keep moving. Yeah. You won't have to be homeless for long. Okay, I'm coming back very soon, So Matthew 10:23. When they, so that's the same one. Romans 13:11 through 30. So this is Paul now, an apostle, making it clear in his letter in Romans. knowing the time that it is now high time to wake up out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. So you'll find this a common theme. They were all saying it. Guys, get your stuff together. He's about to come back any minute now. These are my letters. These are my last warnings to you. You know, sort it out. And he was writing letters to churches in Asia Minor. So these 7 churches around in what we call Turkey today. Okay, these churches aren't around anymore. They're all destroyed. They're all buried. They're all empty husks or remnants of their former self. But even today, a lot of evangelical Christians, mainly in America, want to believe the Church of Philadelphia is symbolically America today because they're lukewarm in their faith or something. But no, he was writing letters to very specific churches at this time, and he was saying, the judgment's coming upon you all, get everything sorted, you know, get ready. And if we look, they're all gone. They're all destroyed. They're all buried. Something cataclysmic happened to these places, okay? It's already done for. But how can we be living in the time where Paul's talking to us if the churches don't even exist anymore? So
Right.
you see what I mean?
Makes sense.
A lot of things going on here. You have to, the wheels start turning with what I'm saying here, and I know a lot of people listening will be like, wait a minute.
Oh, I'm going to tell you right now, the comments are going to go crazy right now. Controversy.
It is very controversial. I know it's controversial, but I can't let this go. It's something's pushing me, you know, and anyone who starts really hearing this and actually hearing it, not just knee-jerk reactions, actually listening sincerely, it'll play on your heart. You'll realize, okay, this holds more weight than you would have otherwise thought. Because even I sat on this for like 4 years before I publicly spoke about it. I had to think this out, you know. And is
this movement growing? Are you part of a movement? Are you the leader of it? I mean, are you the head researcher here?
I am not the head nor the best researcher. I'm just a very prominent voice in it because I don't know when to shut up, basically. But right. There were people who said this before me, and I came about 1.5 years ago in October after researching it for a few years and kind of processing the information, you know. And I made my first video just kind of going through the idea, and it's gone viral now. It's on about 500,000 views, but in this past 1.5 years, we have been growing quite substantially, and there's some fantastic content creators involved in this movement, which are doing way better boots on the ground research, going to these places, or just really getting the meat together through old texts and historical sources that are backing this up more and more. We're not finding less evidence to back this up. The evidence is piling high now. And I guess I'm just like a voice who just summarizes it all quite well for people, and that's why I'm here today, you know. But I believe this, and it took me a long time to accept it, because you do have to kind of shed a lot of programming to kind of get through this, you know. But this makes a lot of sense of a lot of things, including why we even have a conspiracy to begin with, you know. And my channel is called Understanding Conspiracy, and I kind of had to go where the truth led me on this one. And yeah, this seems to be kind of like the end of the rabbit hole, to be honest.
So how are these how many of these verses are there where he's referring to them that he is coming back? I mean, you know, in their lifetime. I mean,
over 200. Like
over 200.
You can only fit so many into one presentation. But this book laid out a good 100 of them just in this book alone. It gets ridiculous. And it's kind of one of those things. It's like, how did we miss this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did we?
It's like it was there all along. And again, I've compiled a few.
Well, unless that church hid it from us.
It seems like the little season concept isn't being taught in seminaries or churches, which then go on to be the pastors and preachers that fill these churches. It's not even a footnote. They don't even mention it because we're under the pretext. Well, there's no evidence in history Christ was here. So they say, you know. So Christ must be coming back soon. And we've just been waiting 2,000 years. So we don't need to worry about the little season of Satan, because that's something that's going to happen 1,000 years from now after the millennial reign. So no one's thinking about it. It's not on the radar. And that's exactly what the devil would do in a little season. He would make everyone think they were behind in time.
Deceit,
you know,
deception.
Exactly. So some more quotes here. You know, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass, these things be fulfilled. And this is the verse a lot of detractors want to always point to and say, ha, you're wrong. Generation doesn't mean the generation of its time. It just means the generation that's going to see these things at some point in the future. But
No, it's like broad. It's like a broad, like just yeah.
But in context to all these other verses that I'm talking about, he's clearly talking to the generation of his time. You can only do some personal mental gymnastics to make it out that he's talking about a future generation, but he is clearly not. Like, he is talking to people right in front of him. And when he says, this generation shall not pass, I'm pretty sure the people listening would have been like, yeah, he's probably talking about us, right? Why would he be talking about it 2,000 years from now when everyone's got iPads and is chilling watching Netflix? Why would he be talking about that generation of people? You know, it
and
just
with AI
work.
coming, I mean, it just seems to me like with everything that's happening right now, I mean, the odds are against us. You know what I mean? It's just
well,
and
it feels like a little season where Satan's got a bit of control, you know, certainly. So this is a good one anyway. So Matthew 26:64, Jesus is talking to Caiaphas, okay, and he's like one of the head Pharisees of the church of the time. And he's confronting him, you know, about who do you say you are? You know, you're calling yourself God and this type of thing. And Jesus says to him, you will see Jesus coming in the clouds of heaven. You'll see me coming in the clouds of heaven, you know. And Caiaphas like wrenched his clothes in anger at this statement. It's like, you're claiming to be the I am, God himself. You know, this is blasphemy, that type of thing. But he told Caiaphas, you're going to live to see me come back. Now, Caiaphas was already old by this point. So if he was going to see it, you know, it's pretty cut and dry. This was not long after his initial death and resurrection. And then after Pentecost, the 40 days and 40 nights, he ascended into heaven with a promise, I'm coming back very soon. Go and make disciples of the nations. I've given you my Holy Spirit. I've poured it out upon all of you. You now have the gifts of the Spirit. Go out and do greater things than I. Go and heal the sick, raise the dead. Go. Go and make disciples of all the nations and spread the gospel to all four corners of the earth. Go. And I'll come back as soon as the gospel's been preached to everybody. And everyone's saying, well, that's not happened today. I mean, the Bible hasn't reached at least 20% of the earth's population. But we're not talking about today, where everything's been hidden and receded and Christendom's under attack. We're talking about their time when Paul was walking around establishing it. And Paul mentions, I think it's in Corinthians, is it 1:23, I think it is. And he's saying, to the gospel which has been preached to all nations, to which I, Paul, am a minister. So even he was saying, it's been done, and we're out of time. Okay, so the Bible says that the gospel was preached to all nations. It's very clear. It's biblically already complete. The work is done. So which is why I believe he was talking to that generation of his time. And
I mean, to me, it's black and white. I mean, it's
Yeah.
saying it right here. I mean,
well, let's listen to the words of Jesus in his final revelation, so the book of Revelation. And this is coming to John the Revelator in prison at Patmos, supposedly, you know, and Jesus comes to him and says, write this down. Basically, I've got a final message for my church. I'm coming back. And he even opens up the entire passage with things which must shortly come to pass. Okay, that's pretty black and white. And then Revelations 1:3, the time is at hand. Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. So even the guys who poked him under the ribs with a spear on the cross are going to see him return with his glory and his kingdom in the clouds. It's happening now in that generation, in those people's lifetimes. It's very clear. These are the words of Jesus Christ himself, the final prophecy to be fulfilled immediately after this. And he even says, seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, John. The time is at hand. Get the message out. Okay, and this is very different.
hurry.
Yeah, and this is very different to Daniel's message. So, because Daniel was told, seal up the message of this scroll, because it's meant for a future generation. Okay, and then 400 years later is when Christ returns, and then this prophecy is revealed, you know. But this is different. This is now saying the complete opposite of what was told to Daniel. He's saying, no, this is for your people now. Go. I'm coming.
But let me ask you this, Paul, and I know a lot of my audience is going to be asking this as well. Where is the scripture of the 1,000 years of reign?
Sure. So of all the things, I don't have that specifically in this document. So maybe you'll have to pull it up, and maybe I'll do it myself now quickly, and I'll just type it in. But it's Revelation 20, and this is the one. So we'll do the KJV just because I personally prefer KJV, and that's just my personal preference. Okay. And it's this whole chapter here where we get the millennial kingdom from. This is what he was talking about coming back and establishing. Okay, this is what he's saying. Come quickly. to get the message out and coming quickly, this is about to happen. So this is what the culmination of everything is after the tribulation event, after the Antichrist declares himself as God in the temple and puts an end to sacrifices, after the temple's destroyed, after the abomination of desolation.
And you're saying that already all happened?
Yes, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, the second temple. It was done in 70 AD. That's not even historically disputed.
So where did the 1,000 years begin and where did it end?
It seems roughly maybe around about 77 AD. It's like the destruction of the temple kicked off the 7-year tribulation period. Then around 77 AD is when it was really fully, the kingdom was established, you know. And historically, that doesn't match up because we've been told there was about 400 years of progression of the early church before Christendom truly took over with Constantine. And then there was the Byzantine Empire, which was 1,000 years, by the way. We know that much. 1,000 years where Christendom completely ruled over the earth. So we can equate the Byzantine Empire to that, but that was around the 400s. So our mainstream historical narrative doesn't match up with what I'm saying here, but I'm saying that's a lie. They have lied about our chronology and events, and they've added time, and they've added events which may not even be real to stretch out that early period of the first millennium. But it seems like...
So during this 1,000 years, I
Yes.
mean, I'm thinking to myself, there's, I was just at Chaco Canyon, you know, and I mean, they were still living in huts and Indians were still... riding the plains and worshiping their gods, you know, and writing cave drawings and, you know, pictographs and all kinds of stuff. So this 1,000 years only happened in one area or the entire world? I mean, I'm confused on this.
Well, first of all, I think one main issue people have with this idea when I'm telling them the 1,000 years has already happened is they think I'm talking about the new heaven and earth, where everything's renewed and the whole earth is completely taken over by Christ in a everything's perfect sense, no more tears situation. All the animals are loving each other rather than eating each other. That type of new heaven and earth. Everyone's in perfected, glowing light bodies as it was back into Adam at the beginning before the corruption. You know, everything's made whole again. And that's the new heaven and earth after the final judgment, you know. I bet people think I'm talking about that, like that's already happened. And people don't realize that this millennial reign of Christ, this 1,000 years on earth, he rules with an iron rod over the nations, and he appoints his saints who have been resurrected after being beheaded for his name's sake. They get to be risen from the dead, given glorified bodies, and they rule over the earth as kings and priests over everything, over the survivors of tribulation, shall we say. And it's not all sunshine and lollipops during the 1,000-year reign. It's not perfect, and there are still people out there and tribes who rejected Christ, who haven't fully come under the wing yet. There's even in the book of Zechariah, it's talking about this time where people have to make pilgrimages to the Mount Zion in the north, the New Jerusalem manifest on earth, where Jesus Christ will be as king, you know. And if you don't make that pilgrimage every year, your nation suffers droughts. You know what I mean? Like, so there was consequences for not bowing down to the king. This is a theocracy. This is a kingdom. And what kingdom does not have people who rebel and reject and fight back,
I agree
you know?
with that.
And I think there would have been plenty of cultures all over the earth who were not on board with this new dictatorship of Christ, which is what it is at the end of the day, you know.
So many still rebelled, but I mean,
yeah. So
I take the 1,000 years from Christ, or, you know, peaceful years. I just see heaven on earth. That's how I interpret it.
That's the final end. That's what they were all waiting for. We're still waiting for that. I'm not saying the new heaven and earth is here
that should have happened in these 1,000 years, though.
That's what everyone thinks, but no, it doesn't say that. And we'll read on in Revelation 20, shall we? Because this kind of explains it all. So this is the end of tribulation, okay? I saw an angel come down from heaven having a key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. So the 1,000-year reign of the saints is actually the 1,000 years where Satan's not there anymore. He's bound in chains. But there will be a time where he's released. That's the time of peace on earth, relative. Now, humans, still pretty simple creatures, still have problems, still prideful, still war-hungry. Humans aren't perfect creatures. but they're being ruled over by perfected saints and Christ himself.
So hold
You know
on,
what I
I'm
mean?
looking at this revelation like the prophet was looking into the future, but to me it sounds like he already saw it.
Well, John would have seen some things while Christ was showing it to him, I think. You know what I mean? Visions came
Right.
upon him, and he was kind of saying what he's seeing, that all this is going to come upon us in the future, you know what I mean? So he explains all of the destruction event of tribulation, and then what comes after, and this is what he saw coming after tribulation. So the devil's bound in chains for it tells you an exact time frame, 1,000 years, and then he's released. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't really think about this. They don't understand what that means. And it's just not on their radar because we're all still in Revelation 16, 13 right now in our minds. We haven't even got to this point in the book as far as we're concerned. So a lot of people aren't concerned with it. What I'm saying is somebody has to live during this time where the devil's released. It could be us. Okay, and that's all. That's the premise of this whole thing. So anyway, I saw thrones, and they sat upon them. The judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither received his mark on their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. So while the devil's locked up for 1,000 years, the saints, the resurrected martyrs for Christ, are reigning as kings with Christ for that 1,000-year period, where the devil's no longer around messing with humanity, whispering.
So the Antichrist already came, and the mark of the beast already came.
Yes. This is what we're saying. This is what we're saying. And this is obviously very contentious. A lot of people are going to be screaming at their screens right now saying, well, what evidence do you have of all that?
Oh, yeah, they are.
We'll get into it. Okay. But
especially my audience.
Let's finish this passage. Okay.
Nuts.
So it says here, the rest of the dead lived not again till the 1,000 years were finished. And then usually this is actually in parentheses in other translations. This is the first resurrection. I think a lot of people get confused at this passage of what the first resurrection is. I'm pretty sure the first resurrection are those who died for Christ and get to be kings. And then the second resurrection happens after the millennial reign. And we don't know when, either at the start of a little season or the end of a little season. Most people lean towards the end of a little season for judgment only. I've theorized we could be living in this time today, perhaps the rest of the dead resurrected to live in a little season. Maybe that's what's going on, but that's just a theory. That's an idea. That's not the gospel truth. I don't know. It's just speculation. But even that idea alone might explain kind of the massive population boom of the 1800s, 1700s that we hear of, and the.
So it would have ended. It would have ended in the 1700s. You say 17.
Yes.
Did you say 1776 is when the 1,000 years ended, or
that's kind of like the predominant popular belief? We don't actually know exactly. So I will get into the timeline after we've read this, and I'll make it very clear what our timeline actually is. And we're not actually living in 2025, by the way. I'll just preface with that, and we'll get to it. Okay, so let's just finish this, but because this is what everything's based on. So, blessed and holy is he that have part in the first resurrection, the martyrs for Christ, kings and rulers, saints. Because the second death have no power. So they're not going to get judged at the end. They're clear. They're in the clean. The eternity with Christ forever already sorted for them. That's their reward, you know. And they shall be priests with God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years are expired, so this time period of peace with the saints ends. It's not eternity. This is not the new heaven and earth that goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. This is a period of time that has a beginning and an end. It's the reward for the martyrs. You will get to have 1,000 years where you're in control. You are the kings, and everyone who murdered you and persecuted you will bow down to you, basically. That's their reward, and that's what this 1,000 years is for. But it ends, and then Satan's loosed out of his prison, and he goes out to deceive the nations, so the whole earth, which is the 4 quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them to battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. And this army goes up the breadth of the earth, encompasses the camp of saints. So the saints are still on earth somewhere, is what they're saying here during this time. Who knows where? I theorized maybe the North Pole or something, maybe an island we don't know about. That's not on our maps, that's hidden from us. But there is a place on earth where the saints still are, and he gathers an army to surround it, and then fire comes down from heaven, from God, and devours the enemies of God and puts an end to it. And then it's final great white throne judgment after that. And then after the judgment, If you're covered by Christ, great, you make it to the new heaven and earth. If you're not written in the book of life, you ain't making it to the new heaven and earth. It's as simple as that, okay? And the lake of fire situation gets involved here. But then, new heaven and earth, after all this stuff I've just discussed. So what I'm saying is we're in this little time period just before the final great white throne judgments. We're in the little season of Satan, where he is out working hard to deceive all the nations of the earth and gather an army to convince them to go make war with something. Okay? And now, if you know it's Jesus Christ and his saints, you ain't signing up to that army. So he's definitely lying about what we're going to fight against. That much has to be clear.
100%.
And
Makes sense to me.
I've got my theories. You know, Trump has just bought Greenland. He's surrounding the north. The armies around the northern region are getting heated,
also,
I don't know.
Also, when you look at the, and I don't know if I saw it with you and Eddie, but I saw it somewhere. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, wow, wait a second here. The Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
To me, could that be depicting Lucifer?
Well, let's talk about timelines and how actually, yes, extremely could be possibly actually.
I mean,
Lucifer,
bearing light has an ankle shackle. I mean,
yeah. So I'll get the
wait a minute here.
I'll get the photo up while I'm here, shall I? So Lucifer, Statue of Liberty. This is easy to find. This is not a hidden concept. So this is the painting that the Statue of Liberty is based upon, and you can pretty much see. It's identical. They've even got the same middle parting. You know what I mean?
The face, the nose, everything.
Yeah, and this is obviously Apollo, the sun god, as well. This is a solid representation of Prometheus, the god, the one who stole the fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Lucifer.
Hit the foot right there. There it is with the shackle.
This is Lucifer, the light bringer. That's what Lucifer means. The light bearer, the torch holder. The one who freed mankind from an evil and oppressive God in the Garden of Eden, who wanted to keep mankind down by giving them the knowledge of the good and evil.
And is that the book, the knowledge that he's holding?
Possibly, yeah. But this is Lucifer with his chain broken, and who was bound by a chain by an angel at the beginning of his imprisonment. You know?
Holy shit.
And now the chain is broken, and here he is. Absolutely. So in terms of timelines, I said 77 AD. Okay. Now, there's a brilliant researcher called Gunnar Heinsohn, and you can go to my channel. I'll stop screen sharing now, by the way, just so we can kind of carry on with this. But he's a fantastic researcher. Okay, he sadly passed away a year ago, but he's not a Christian, so he's not trying to look for this stuff. Okay, but he basically researched archaeology and the science behind archaeology and stratigraphy, which is layers, sedimentary layers, and you dig down and you find stuff. And the further down you dig, the further back in history you're going. You know what I mean? And he went through all the Roman sites throughout Europe, about 30,000 dig sites, and not one of them had anything under Rome. None of them. There's nothing below Rome. So what this means basically is the Roman Empire, as we knew it, which I believe covered the whole earth, was like a conglomerate of many empires throughout history that have been building up from Babylon. It was just currently known as Rome before its collapse, you know. And this is the vision of the 5 empires of Daniel, where it's kind of the final one is clay and iron mixed together, you know, and then a rock comes down and smashes the statue and destroys it, the empire. And Rome is that final empire. That's not even disputed. Okay, so Christ comes as the rock that destroys the Roman Empire. It's all symbolically there. And if you look at the history and the archaeological records, there was Rome, and then it was completely buried. So even the historical record is showing a complete cataclysmic event, just buried Rome. We are constantly digging up Roman ruins. Bathhouses. Even in England, we're still digging them up today. I have a friend who's a part of this community. He's called JT Follows JC. He's called Joe. He has a fantastic channel. He's always sending me documents and posts of brand new architecture just dug up from the Roman Empire. Always happening. And Gunnar Heinsohn basically went through the whole thing, and he's saying the timeline makes zero sense. We're told in the first millennium, the first 1,000 years, there was 3 cataclysmic events. 3rd century, 5th century, and then you go all the way into like the 7th, 8th century, 9th century, roughly around that period. They're guessing, by the way. They have rough estimates. But the 1st century had the barbarian invasion, which destroyed Rome. But only half of Europe suffered that. And then it seems like in the 5th century, the other half of Europe suddenly collapsed because of massive cataclysmic horrific style volcanic eruption event took place in 536 AD. And this is not disputed. You can find out about 536 AD. The worst year on human record, it's known as to historians.
Wow.
And this is literally
536 AD.
You read the documents of the accounts of people who lived during this time. The sun did not shine for 18 months. Okay?
Wow.
It was out. Okay? Because a huge, enormous black smoke just covered the sky. No stars. So
Which would have caused death in the millions.
Oh, absolutely. It did. And a mini ice age to boot. No crops. Failure of everything. People just dying. And people were documented to be witnessing demons knocking on people's doors. And then suddenly they get a horrible plague and die a horrible death 2 days later. And it's this.
Would they be speaking literally?
Yes. It seems like angels had come down to bring tribulation onto the enemies of God who rejected him. It seems like that happened. And this is all biblical events. The sun won't shine. The stars will fall. The stars didn't shine for 18 months, you know. The sun no longer gave us its light. It's described as like a putrid, cold light was kind of shining through, but it was always constant. And it never, nothing ever got stronger or worse.
So you think they were actually seeing real demons come to their door? When they write this, they mean it.
Oh, yeah. These guys aren't joking. And it's got people, it got to the point where they were just tipping bodies into the ocean off the edge of cliffs because they didn't know what to do with the bodies anymore. It's just piling up. There's no control over this. It was chaos, absolute chaos in 536 AD for that period of time. And
demons were running amok.
Basically, it's nuts. Just read the accounts of this time and from Roman legionnaires and
I think we're there again. I think demons are have been unleashed among us. I think there's a lot of people getting pictures with the whole alien card that's coming that they're getting ready to play on us. All this stuff is like, I think they're coming through portals.
I could talk about that for hours. That's a whole other podcast. But on focus here. So we had the first disaster, a mass movement of people, invasions everywhere. Okay, and they say this is all what contributed to the collapse of Rome, they're saying. And then 536 AD, just a horrible cataclysm that wiped out millions. They think a volcano went off. But if you read the accounts, it's like every single volcano on Earth went off. It's the only way, you know. And the running theory is that you might know a thing or two about Tartaria. Buried buildings that are like half underground for some reason, but the foundations are still level. So it's odd. Like, what buried these buildings? Yeah. You know, people digging out old ruins, you know, all the time.
But is it volcanic?
It's highly likely. It turns out ash, when it comes down, eventually turns to mud, with water included with rain. And it's likely this ash cloud descended and buried a lot of stuff at the end of it. And that's why we have buried buildings. It wasn't a mud flood, as it's known. It was just ash gently resting down on things and burying them.
There's just so much we don't know.
Yeah,
it bothers me.
But this is a working theory, which I think fits to tribulation. I think tribulation did come with, not after every volcano goes off, the water of the earth became salt water because of the minerals that were released and everything else. I think underwater volcanoes were also going off. And there's even like one, it's called Pliny the Elder, okay? And he's like a Roman petty ruler of a small region in Europe at the time. And he has a son called Pliny the Younger. And they've got their letters they're writing to the, the Caesar of the day type of thing. And he's saying, I went to go test the waters and they were salty all of a sudden. He's trying to figure out how he can solve this problem of the water suddenly being salty after all of this. So the earth changed drastically is what I'm saying in this time period. And then in the 9th century, we're told something similar happened again. Like a volcanic, horrible, plague-like event. And those are 3 separate disasters all throughout the first millennium. And that contributed to the collapse of Rome, we were told, slowly. And at the same time, Christendom's just kind of slowly getting its footing,
Up.
Yeah, but if you look at the archaeology and the buildings they were making in the 9th century as churches are identical to the architecture they were building in the 1st century. And they tried to tell you it was a new revival of Roman architecture, of the Byzantine style.
The cathedrals.
Well, they're like pillared. Particularly
Do you have pictures you could pull that up?
Very Romanesque architecture.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, these cathedrals or whatever, the architecture is unbelievable.
Yeah. So give me a second. I'll pull up his presentation from the video and just show, because he has all the pictures there himself. So it's just easier just to do that than me looking for them individually. So if I just type in Gunnar Heinsohn, And what he's basically saying while showing all these things is there's no way they just decided to revive the architecture 700 years later. It's like the first century architecture. We've been told it's 9th century, but it's not. It's all from the first century.
Well, that's why I brought up the 1800s and the horse and buggy.
Yeah.
I mean, how could that type of intellect or the people in that part of history build these enormous looking like castles and cathedrals that just have unbelievable architecture when they're just still on a horse and buggy and building wood saloons?
Exactly.
It's hard to understand this. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't make sense. This is what we're trying to tell people. The timeline's a mess. So this is the man. This is Gunnar Heinsohn, and he's been... he wrote books about this. Very respected researcher in his time. But he's basically laying out how this is that example of 2 separate disasters that show the Roman Empire in purple collapse in the 3rd century. Then in the 6th century, the orange side happened. How was there a perfect divide? Is it likely it was the same event, not separated by 300 years? And he's basically going, that's his premise throughout. And he makes a great example of the 10th century collapse. And he's basically saying there isn't 3 collapses, there's 1. And it all happened in the 1st century, is the evidence he's come to. And if we look here, I broke this down into segments, but he's basically saying the architectural styles of these periods. So antiquity, the 1st, 2nd, late antiquity, the 4th, 5th, and antiquity in Jerusalem. These 3 countries had the exact same architecture spread out for hundreds of years. But we're told that there was no progress, basically, in architectural advancements. We're told it's more likely they were the same buildings built in the exact same time. And he makes all this clear in this presentation. Go to my channel. I've broke it down into like easy to digest 10-minute segments. I've removed nothing, just made it easier to digest for people. It's a fantastic presentation. It's sad he's not with us anymore. But here he is talking about the architectural styles, and they're being resurrected 700 years later. And he's saying that's just not possible. They wouldn't have done that. No way. He talks about England. He talks about everywhere in Europe, the Celtic. He basically says they've kind of lied about who did what as well. He even talks about King Arthur in this and how King Arthur can be dated way further back in time to BC rather than Middle Ages. He's saying
everything we know is wrong.
It's nuts. And honestly, this architecture is wonderful. He's talking here about the frescoes from the 8th century and the frescoes from the 1st century. And he's saying the art style's the same, this lack of perspective art style. And he's saying there was no advancement in artistic style in 800 years. No chance. He's saying no chance. Is that the case? And he's saying also they rebuilt with the same roof tiles, apparently, the building again 800 years later. It says roof tiles don't last 800 years, is what he's trying to say. It's kind of, it's completely messed up. And then he talks about
0 sense.
Then he talks about,
look at that. How do you build that back then?
Well, exactly. Now he's talking about after the burying of Rome. So here's a picture in the top left of what it originally looked like. Here it is after it got buried, and you only have the tops of it available, and people have built houses on top of it after the disaster. And it's saying when you dig down, you can find what it truly was, and it's typical Roman architecture. Here's the dig sites he's all gone to. Not one of them have anything underneath. Wow. And then he said suddenly there's an explosion of monasteries after this.
Okay, that right there. Look at that.
Yeah.
When was that built?
This came immediately after the 10th century.
Look at that architecture. How would a man even build that?
Yeah, but what Gunnar Heinsohn's saying is you can take 700 years out of the first millennium. There's not 700 years worth of history there. All those disasters happened in the 1st century. So around 77 to 100 AD. Rome was buried. Everything was destroyed in one enormous cataclysmic event, which we'll call tribulation. And then immediately after, where people did not know what to do. And he says something happened. We don't know what it is. We call it the Dark Ages. There's like no history. Right. But what we do know is suddenly the only thing that came back afterwards was churches everywhere, monasteries, cathedrals. Christendom just exploded, took over the whole earth immediately afterwards. And
so that would align with 1,000 years.
Yeah. All people knew is it was after Christ, Anno Domini, AD. And that's when the new dating began. So it's not actually 2025. Let's just take 700 years off of our time. We're actually in like the year 1325, roughly, give or take. Okay. And what happened is 77 AD, 1,000-year reign of Christ, 1077 AD is exactly when the little season probably began. But to our calendars today, that's actually 1776, when America was established.
Yeah.
Independence Day was established. The Statue of Liberty, everything about,
Oh, wow, my mind is blown.
So take 700 years off of 1776, it's 1076, about 1,000 years after the destruction of the temple. Yeah, so it's all lines up quite well when you actually think about it. And this guy's research, not a Christian, not looking for that, doesn't even come to that conclusion because it's not on his radar, but it matches with our research perfectly. It fits like a glove. It's ridiculous. And he has just made it clear. They've lied to us about our timeline. It is not as long as they've told us it is. And he's not the only one.
Wouldn't he? Lucifer would do that. That's how this would be played out.
Well, it says in the Bible he seeks to change times and seasons. That's what he aims to do. And people have thought that about, well, that's something to do with changing Sunday worship from Saturday to Sunday, or messing with our calendars, which he has done, But is it likely he's quite literally changed the time period we think we're living through in a very literal sense? And
why not?
We're not waiting for the disasters of tribulation. All of this proves it already happened. We're waiting for the final Gog and Magog war at the end of time. And I have my theories on that. Aliens are involved. Maybe we can get onto that, but I'll give it to you for now. And that's the basic introductory premise to this whole thing, and that's just some evidence we have. I believe what we call Tartaria is actually the millennial reign of Christ. And when you add Christ into the equation and this millennial kingdom aspect, it makes sense of where these buildings came from. There was a 1,000-year period of time where humanity was not hindered by the devil and was inspired by God himself, with holy saints walking around preaching the gospel and the truth. And with that time and with that truth, not having to work for money anymore or anything like that, you have 1,000 years of inspiration with the Son of God himself there. You're going to build beautiful things. You're going to
explosion of creativity.
Absolutely. So there we go. That's it roughly. But I have thousands of hours of content on my channel dedicated to this. Go and check it out. I mean, if I just quickly click on here, and that's my introduction.
Absolutely. I highly recommend following his channel, folks.
I've got a playlist here. Millennial Kingdom came, and honestly, I don't know how many videos are on here now. It's getting excessive. But we've gone through every angle, every aspect of this. We've tried to figure it all out, It's all here. Go and check it out. And again, I interview and talk with lots of other people as well, who create content, and we're kind of collaborating on this quite well. And we go through the Mark of the Beast, Nero, possible contenders for the Antichrist, the possible end game, how the war's going to go down. Everything's here. Why we have secret societies, which all came around, by the way, in 1776 with the Bavarian Illuminati, because these are the agents of Satan who were just waiting for him to come out of the pit, who were living through the rain probably and just hated Jesus, but had to be secret, had to lay underground. And as soon as Lucifer's released...
So let me ask you this, Paul.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. How long does the little season last? How long do we think it lasts?
We're not told any specifics.
Less than 1,000 years, I would imagine.
It has to be less than 1,000 years, that's true. People think 250, but I would say it's an arbitrary guess to say 250.
Well, America is already 250. I mean, what is America right now? That's if you said it started in 1776, America is over 200-some years old. So
yeah,
where are we? I mean,
if you look at the Theosophical Society, have you heard of those guys? Helena Blavatsky, that group, the Lucis Trust today. They're quite a prominent think tank, aren't they? Involved with most governmental bodies and things like that. Well, they're theosophists. Okay, and they believe all the religions are pointing to the truth of Lucifer, basically, and they're trying to indoctrinate most of the world into Lucifer's light. That's their.
I mean, the Statue of Liberty. To me, now looking at it, I'm like, how did I miss that?
Yeah, well, they believe 2025 is going to be the coming of the world teacher, and we need to prepare the way with the externalization of the hierarchy, the hidden hand, for people to accept Lucifer when he turns up, basically. And we're in 2025 now, and they were pretty clear about that date, and that would put us in the 250-year period region of a little season. So maybe it's only 250 years. We'll see what happens in the next year or two. But
well, I would imagine. I wonder, and it is just a theory, but you know, we've had ancient aliens on television for the last decade talking about, we were seeded by aliens, and
Hmm.
they're getting ready to spin that narrative. They're getting
Oh
ready to
yeah.
play the alien card. I think what we're watching now is a controlled disclosure. They're letting people come out and talk about it that they think, all right, that's a safe person, but they're not really giving it all to you.
Hmm.
You got the 1947 Roswell crash. I mean, this is picking up speed.
Yeah.
The whole alien card, I believe, is coming. And I think, well, once they've lied to us about everything else. Why aren't they going to just lie to us and tell us that, yep, these are your brethren or they are your creators,
Hmm.
and this is who you should be worshiping, right?
Do you want to hear my take with the little season
Sure.
theory?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the alien phenomenon is a big conspiratorial subject that I've contended with for years as well, and I'm with you. Project Bluebeam, fake alien invasion. How can we control the masses? The threat of out of space. Ronald Reagan making his speech. Maybe we need an outside threat that could bring us all together. How petty our differences would seem in face of an alien threat. How quickly we'd all just come together as one and drop our borders and stop the wars. And I was thinking about all of this, and then we have like the propaganda of aliens throughout media for like over 100 years since the War of the Worlds. You know what I mean? With reading the story out over the radio without telling people it was a story, and everyone was panicking, thinking it's a radio broadcast. Saying,
Right.
and they were shooting their grain towers, thinking they were tripods. You know what I mean?
It's crazy,
right? But the propaganda's been hard since then, and we've had one alien movie after another, and space movies and space.
That's all they put out
you know?
now. Yeah.
And
Independence Day.
Well, it's always the same story, isn't it? Mothership turns up. Humanity gets attacked. They barely survive the first wave. And then they all come together as one. And united they stand. Humanity goes back for a counterattack and takes down the evil mothership just in time. And maybe with the help of good aliens is sometimes thrown in there who come just at the right time, the rebel aliens or whatever it is. There's always a bit of a Hollywood spin. But that's exactly what you've been programmed for. Like, we have been programmed through Hollywood for like over 100 years with that kind of programming. And I'm trying to make sense of it from a biblical perspective. And there is the angle of you've got fallen angels who are going to pose as aliens, or you've got the demonic Nephilim horde in the spirit realm they're going to bring back into the physical in some way, maybe through portals or transhumanist vessels they're going to create for the spirits to inhabit. Or you could tag many ideas together in the conspiracy world. I was thinking, like, what would be the end goal, really? What's the driving factor? Then if you actually add this little season theory into it, things click into place in a very, very dramatic way. So we're programmed to believe when something giant appears in the sky, it has to be aliens from space.
And an enemy.
It turns out New Jerusalem, a city where Christ sits on his throne, descends from heaven in the end. So realistically, if we're actually
he would be the enemy.
If we are in the end, new heaven and earth, it's possible New Jerusalem will become visible in the north. And as soon as, or it's already here because it came down at the start of the millennial reign, maybe. And it seems to be like spiritual and physical. And maybe the veil's going to drop and we'll see it. It's going to look like...
So it's actually a physical place.
I think it's both. It's in heaven and on earth. And I think it kind of manifests physical sometimes, and it kind of drifts in and out of our reality. And I think the camp of saints is likely below it, in a physical sense, where the saints are somewhere, and the heavenly cities above, from heaven. And it's where they meet the earth in the center. I think that's what we're coming together. If you look at all the old maps, there's something in the middle of the earth. Like there's something right in the center. It's like got 4 rivers coming out from it, and a black rock, a Rupus Nigra, in the center. And black rock is like the most powerful bank in the world. And it's kind of, you have to wonder where all this comes from. But if suddenly something did just appear in the sky, and let's say it's New Jerusalem, it's Jesus and his saints, no one's going to know that in the little season. Everyone's going to look at it and go, it's aliens. I've seen the movies. And they're immediately going to jump 100%. To aliens. And that's when you fake the invasion. Okay, that's when you release from the underground military bases the flying saucers like that we have built.
Right.
And that's why the alien greys we've genetically created in labs are piloting them. And they're going to destroy cities and come out of nowhere. The monsters are going to rise out of the ground. The Nephilim are going to return and start ripping people apart. You know what I mean?
Complete deception.
And we're going to think the mothership brought all this destruction upon us. But it's the fake alien invasion is suddenly at play. Project Bluebeam.
And you're saying that this is actually the kingdom of Jesus.
Yeah, and he's just chilling. He hasn't done anything. He's just appeared. But that's when the evil controllers, the Illuminati, we'll call them, or the occultists, the Luciferians who are behind the scenes, who own everything now, they'll release their alien invasion, and make us think the mothership sent the stuff, But really,
I've noticed
it's just Christ,
Doge.
Go ahead.
I've noticed Elon's Doge is uncovering all this wasteful spending and useless spending and all this, but it's like he hasn't touched NASA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute here, why? That's probably the most useless spending, wasteful spending. And then I think, Elon's busy shooting off rockets into space. We're gonna go colonate Mars. I just don't buy it.
It props up the lie, doesn't it? It props up the concept that there's vast infinite space and aliens must exist. And then also that ties in with evolution theory, that we're all evolving from nothing.
We came from slime.
Yeah. And that means there must be advanced aliens out there further along in their evolutionary process than us. And I think when the fake alien invasion happens, we'll push back the first wave, or they'll disappear or something, and we'll be like in shambles and ruins. I think good aliens will turn up and push back the evil invading aliens, okay? And it's just a show. It's all show. They're not really good aliens, okay? They are the fallen angels coming to destroy the problem they caused, basically. Problem, reaction, solution stuff. And then they'll probably say something to humanity like this: we've come from Zeta Reticuli, we seeded your planet millions of years ago, and we are your actual gods and creators. And what's attacking you is the evil Emperor Zurg from the Omicron system or something. It's just something stupid, something like straight out of Hollywood, something pathetic and weird, But we'll believe it. And it's like, we've come to protect you from this evil, colonizing, evil force in space, but you're not quite ready yet. You're too far behind in your evolutionary process to stand a chance. We need to catch you up with us. So take this mark, take this advancement, take this technology, become gods like us, and you can join the Galactic Federation and we can fight back against this evil thing ourselves, But we have to believe evolution and we have to believe space for any of that to make any sense.
Right there, and nobody's coming out against the moon landing. When I know but I look at this stuff, I'm just like, oh my gosh, please. But I have emails all the time, people talking about Valthor. Supposedly, have you heard of Valthor? The alien that's here teaching the atomic scientists. All right, hold on. It gets better. And then they start telling me about,
there's the channelers who are always communicating with the Palladians
the
as well.
New Age stuff. The New Age stuff that I'm getting, and it's always channelers. Like you said, you're right. That's always the ones who come up and tell me, oh, they're here. The Galactic Federation. Trump is part of the Galactic Federation, and I can't validate any of that. I can't prove any of that. I've had some of these people on my show, and I just sit there. I listen to them, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, how do you know this? Oh, they channeled it.
You trust that spirit, do you? Did they test those spirits before listening to the lies they're going to tell them? It's just nonsense. It's just fallen angels and Nephilim spirits lying to people as they've always done, and spinning a false narrative in preparation for this agenda they're working on to deceive all the nations, so they'll all come together as one to go make war with the camp of saints at the end. And
when do you think this alien card gets played? In your opinion?
Well, I think it's already happening. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. Like I said, all these things are already happening. There's already a huge plethora of people ready to welcome aliens with open arms. I think the world has been made so bored and apathetic that they just wish aliens would turn up and make things more interesting as well. I think most of the world is thoroughly indoctrinated to embrace this, and we Christians will stand alone saying, no, these are clearly fallen angels or demons.
And they'll look at us as idiots.
Absolutely.
Small-minded, closed-minded.
Yeah. And
archaic.
And if you're a part of the Little Season crew who thinks we're in that timeline, we're going to be even more absurd, because it's like, I'm not making war with that thing. That's Jesus up there. That's the beloved city. That's the camp of saints. That's Mount Zion. That's New Jerusalem come down from heaven. And they're going to look at you and go, what do you mean you're not going to join the Earth army to fight back against the evil invading aliens? What are you, some kind of traitor? We're going to be seen as traitors against humanity because we won't fight. And then we'll be probably killed, shot in the back of the head, lined up, hung, drawn, quartered, I don't know. Yeah. Something like that. But, I mean, I'm not going to go make war with Jesus. And I think many Christians will be fooled into doing that, because they don't know where we are in the timeline. They're all geared up and prepared for a game of chess, but this is water polo. And when it comes, they're not going to be prepared for the right game when it goes down. You know what I mean? It's kind of, we're not Christians aren't ready for this because they're thinking, well, I'm going to get raptured and tribulation's going to happen and then I'm going to rule with Christ for 1,000 years, so I'm covered, And it's kind of, you're not ready. None of that's going to go down the way you think it's going to go down because we're not in that time. Millions will lose their faith when tribulation does not go down how they thought it was going to go down. And I think right now they're putting on a bit of a show for us. I think it's all Masonic theatre. I think they're trying to make it look like we're living in tribulation. So there's always a new mark of the beast. Is it RFID chips? Is it nanotech? Is it transhumanism? Is it barcodes? Is it chip and pin? Is it Neuralink?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's all coming out. But it just sure does seem, if I wasn't talking to you, I would think, and there's many others that I've talked to, I would think this is Revelations.
Yeah, well, I think that's the game.
Because everything's being exposed, right?
That's the point, though. I think that they want us to think we're in that time. So they have to put up a show to make us believe that's the case. Every single new president since the beginning of history has been the Antichrist contender. Yeah. There's always a new mark of the beast around every corner. It's like the carrot's always stringing you along, because they need to keep us in that time zone. Oh, Israel's just been made a new nation. That's fulfilling the prophecy of Daniel. Yeah. This is a 70-week prophecy. Oh, they're building a temple. The Antichrist is going to turn up and go in the temple.
Red heifers. They're getting ready to sacrifice the red heifers.
The second temple was already destroyed. The prophecy was already fulfilled in 70 AD, but no one knows that because that's not a part of history you're really taught in schools. But it's known. It's documented. You're just not told about it in church. And I think they put on a very good show to make us believe we're still waiting for Christ to return. But I think the number's up very soon. I think they're running out of time. Israel technically has been around for so long now that they're hinging on this idea that in their generation, when Israel's made a nation, within that generation, Christ will return. How long's a generation? It's been how old's the oldest people who first inhabited that land now?
You don't see anybody in the 1800s walking around anymore.
They're running out of time, so maybe they're going to do something silly. But I think if you read the works of Albert Pike, a 33rd degree Mason, he said we're going to foment a third world war, which will destroy religion and atheism simultaneously. So then we
bring the doctrine of Lucifer.
Exactly. And I think we're going to have a man-made war first very soon, which is going to be horrible. But it's not the Gog-Magog war. It's not.
I will say, it doesn't look like. It just seems like everything's kind of shifted with Trump. Yeah, I went away from the Ukraine, but now we're back in the Middle East, and Iran is getting ready to shoot off. I mean, it's just shifted.
Yeah. Well, we've always had contention in that region. And look, I'm a British person. Who am I to get involved in British politics? Right. I've learned a long time ago. I'll keep my mouth shut about that because it's not.
But you're talking about religion. Those are the two things you don't talk about: religion and politics.
But in terms, what I'll say about Trump is, I love his paper straw policy. We need to get the plastic straws back. I agree with that one at the very least. So we'll say that about that. But. Anyway, I've given you a lot of things to kind of chew on, but that's the idea and its premise. But again, I didn't even touch on the architecture, really. There's evidence of all of this, the cathedrals, the saints themselves, and the hagiography.
You want to talk about that briefly?
Well, there is a field of study called hagiography, and I've only really just started to get into it. And I've kind of discovered through AI false accounts, which AI was giving us. But since then, we've kind of gone back and we've researched the archives of Oxford libraries and churches. And we're actually finding real documented histories of the saints as they lived. And these guys are performing some ridiculous miracles. Very insane superhero style stuff, you know what I mean? But no one knows about these stories, and people have said, oh, well, that's just fiction, that's just made up. But it could be that these are actually talking about real people who survived during the millennial reign, performing miracles like never seen before, So there is that aspect. And then there's obviously the cathedrals everywhere, which are basically music manifested into the physical reality. They are. Right.
Do you have pictures of these cathedrals that you could just show my audience real quick?
Yeah, sure.
When you look at this stuff, it's like, how is that even possible? I don't think you don't see anybody building this today.
No.
You don't see anybody building this today.
No.
So pay attention to this, folks, because I want to really bring your attention to this. These cathedrals are magnificent. The architecture, and I've seen some of these close up. What was that cathedral that just burned in New York? That said a lot to me.
I'm not sure.
That blaze of fire that took over that cathedral in New York.
I remember that one. I think I remember underneath that there are some amazing old waterworks as well, which we just don't build like that today as well. But I know the one you mean.
We don't build like that anymore.
So I have a compilation of hundreds of these things.
Just show some of them for my audience so they can get an idea of.
It might be
this would have been in the reign of the 1,000 years of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, so it might be a good idea. I have a video which kind of showcases a lot of these, and maybe as we talk, we can kind of go through them. But I also have a compilation of photos. So let me just quickly share the screen with you guys. I just have them on my Lightroom account. I can just skip through them quite easily on there. So we'll show them through that and share. So here we are on Lightroom. You guys can see this.
Look
now.
at that thing.
These aren't even cathedrals. These are just buildings that are around which have been given to the government. And I think these were left over from not only Rome when it collapsed. I think a lot of the old Roman architecture got given to the saints. I think they ruled in these buildings after Rome collapsed, and they were given over that kingdom to rule over. But I think then Gothic architecture began to appear and be built next to Roman architecture, and that's what came with the millennial reign. But if we look through some of these photos, look at the lifestyle these people were living. Look at these places. We call it antiquitech. And it's the idea that these were pulling energy straight from the ether. These were energy harvesting machines. They weren't just simply nice places to live. They had purpose. This is Lincoln.
Look at that.
This is Lincoln Cathedral in the UK. I actually studied right next to this for 3 years when I was doing my art degree. And pictures do not do this thing justice. It looks like nothing else around it. Look how enormous that is, like compared to just a standard building next to it. And when you look at it, your eyes hurt because there's so much detail. You can't take all the information in. It's hard to look at because it's so intense. Like I can't, and then maybe you have to see a European.
And that is stone. That is stone.
Yes,
like it's not even poured concrete. Like how did they get that up there?
Oh yeah, and that's not even it. This actually had 2 extremely tall spires on each of those front prongs originally. It was taller than the pyramids originally. Then that collapsed apparently in I think like the 700 and killed a lot of people, and they just never rebuilt after that. But let's look at some of these things. This is Crystal Palace, and the story behind this is ridiculous. They took it down and rebuilt it somewhere else, and then it was destroyed in a fire. So they built it twice, and then it disappeared after a fire. A load of nonsense. The story does not add up. These are just leftovers after the reign ended. And I think secret societies like Freemasons just took the Freemasonry that was laying around and claimed it as their own and said they built it. But really, these are just leftovers of a kingdom. Then they have the whole world.
1,000 years of reign.
Yeah, this is like the world fairs. So they had these expositions, didn't they, in random places all over the world, America and France included. And then afterwards, they just destroyed everything. Yeah, these were supposed to be temporary buildings. You look at some of these buildings, we don't even build permanent buildings in the quality they built these temporary buildings. No. They were never temporary.
No, we're supposed to be more advanced now.
They were already there. These buildings were already there, is what we're saying. They came up with a convenient narrative to cover up their existence and then destroy them. And around that time period, 600s to 800s, the amount of fires that took over most of Europe and America, just destroying and wiping out entire regions, unprecedented. The amount of destruction World War I and the carpet bombings and World War II caused in mainland Europe as well, destroying most of this architecture, unprecedented. All the civil wars kicked off around the same period, at the American Civil War. Then
they really wanted to get rid of this history.
Yeah, then you had the French Civil War, which rewrote history as well with Napoleon. Then you had the Russian Revolution in World War I with communism. A lot of stuff was destroyed. We're living in the squalid remnants.
You know, when we went into Iraq, we went straight into their museum and took everything out of there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Buried history, hidden history. This is quite interesting. This is in Naples. They added an M to the original thing. So M adds 1,000 years to the original time that was over there. So the timeline is such a mess that we don't know if it's 700 years older or 1,000 years older, but they've played around heavily with everything, and they've defaced things and added things, and the coins from this time period say J476, and everyone said, oh, that's a 1, not a J or an I with a dot. That represents 1, so it's 17 something or other, or 14 something or other. But really, what it probably means is the year of our Lord Jesus, 476, when these coins were around.
Look at that.
And look at the people below. When you think of the scale of this thing, these people with horse and buggy and carts and did not build these things. They didn't. You cannot tell me that they did that. Look at the floor. It's rubble. It's mud. The floor's mud. Okay. no way would you build this and not pay attention to the roads surrounding it and make something nice. You know what I mean? It's
100%.
And here's examples of melted buildings. Meltology is a huge field of study involved with this, and there's evidence all over the earth that a lot of things have melted with fervent heat already through tribulation. I mean, this is melted rock. These were something once upon a time, and it's just melted. There's loads of evidence for this. The rock has been burnt up to the point where it turned melted like wax, as it's described in Revelation. It's happened. A lot of it has already happened. So these are some quite modern cathedrals. This is a quite famous one. This is the inside. You know, again, photographs do not do it justice. Like you have to see this with your own eyes, and I beg anybody to go and see. If you go more over to the Eastern Orthodox, their churches are insane. They're like 5D cubes that like manifested into a 3D reality. Like they are hypercubes, the designs, and they're psychedelic in nature. You know,
look at that. Look at that.
Oh yeah. And
that's all what it, look at that.
They're unlike anything else around them. They stand out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? And we're kind of like glazed over it these days when you see these things every day. But when you actually look at it and you realize the surrounding architecture that was built in the modern age, it's kind of like we have gone backwards. We have not gone forwards. Like we are far behind these days.
I mean, look at that. Those are pillars of stone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Of stone. And we're just, right now, we're still doing hammer and wood and nails. And look at this.
Yeah.
What kind of technology did they use?
I mean, just a lot of slaves, apparently, and perseverance. So you tell me everyone through the Middle Ages was an enhanced stonemason with the ability and artistic design and understandings of geometry to create these things? These populations were supposed to be small at this point. And it's kind of, I'm not buying it. The narrative fails miserably when you actually pay attention. These things are incredible. This is in Liverpool, and again, look at this thing. It doesn't make sense. Look how enormous that is compared to this tiny little building down here, which
they're built specifically to serve Christ.
Well, that, and I think they were healing centers. I think they were charging centers for energy. I think they were multi-purposes. I think they were machines. A cathedral is a cathode. It's an energy holding device.
Makes sense.
I think our cities are built like circuit boards from the sky when you actually look at them. I think everything served a function. I think buildings during this time where Christ was around, they served as receivers and antennae and harnesses and storages for free energy. I think we wanted for nothing during the millennial reign. There were benefits for joining the kingdom, you know, and I think most of the earth did, except for a few which are now in the desert dwelling regions who rebelled during his time, you know, but they didn't get rain. They had consequences. So that's why they're all desert regions now. And I think we couldn't even begin to comprehend the lives these people were living during the millennial reign. But it's only still just a taste of the new heaven and earth. These are physical buildings. The new heaven and earth is heaven manifest on earth. It's the coming together of the spiritual and the physical in one kingdom. This is just the earthly aspect that mirrors what it's like in the heavenlies, you know? And I think what's coming is far greater than what the millennial reign would have been. But the millennial reign itself is a testament to the glory of what God is capable of and what people can do without the devil around. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. Look at the beauty. I bet this was just like a train station or something.
The finite details.
Yeah, but I bet this was just nothing to the people who built it. It's like, oh, this is going to be the post office. Do you know what I mean? And they built this thing. Like, it's because they thought they understood beauty and functionality are one and the same, and it matters. Beauty matters to create a place people care about. You know, and look what we do today. Look what we do to our old buildings. We impose the new world order onto it. And it's cold, it's sharp, it's minimalist, it's basic, it's cheap, you know, and we destroy the old, and they're mocking us with this modern art thing. You look at this monster. Yeah, we can build taller these days, but it's quality over quantity is what I prefer, you know. The stark difference between the architectural styles is ridiculous, you know, and I think what we did here, completely made of copper, this thing, it's gone green. You know, it's far better than this pyramid structure behind here made of concrete. I'll take the beauty over the functionality any day. And these things are just incredible. Look at this old Roman Empire ruins that are still around. People were living in them. This architecture is everywhere too. I think this is Rome, and then we have cathedrals built after Rome, which is the millennial reign. But we have both side by side. Then we have insane asylums. You know, we're going to lock these people up that we think are deranged because they're super religious. Let's build a castle for them. Does that make any sense?
None.
No, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
None.
But they're all castles. They're all absolutely beautiful, stately building castles, and the Odd Fellows claim ownership of them, which is Freemasonry. We built all the insane asylums. It's kind of like, no, you didn't. You just stole the architecture that was laying around and claimed it. You founded it. You found it. You know what I mean? That's the joke at play here. But again, these buildings are, to me, a footnote in our research. They're definitely a great example, but I stand by the words of Jesus Christ as my evidence for all of this, and I work backwards from there. I don't trust the historical record given to me by man, and I know this spits in the face of academia and those supposed experts out there who will call me a lunatic, but I don't care. I don't care. Christ told the truth as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to work.
You're taking it literally at face value, the way he said it.
Yes.
And then you're showing these magnificent structures to prove your theory that this already happened.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, a lot of it is Rome as well, which wasn't built during the Millennial Kingdom. So this building is typical Roman architecture here. Okay. But then the cities that were built afterwards and the cathedrals that were built afterwards, I'd say they were Millennial Reign architecture. But I think the old empire, which spanned the whole earth, was given to the saints as their rewards. They get to rule the kingdoms now. So it's kind of like, why waste something that works? It's functional. You know what I mean? Why waste it? Yeah. But then it's also keep that there as an example because we can do better. I think that's what was going on as well. And yeah, look at these things. They are beautiful. The cathedrals are insane. This is just a hotel today. They turn it into a hotel or something. I think there's so many of these buildings, they don't know what to do with them. So the government kind of took a lot of them and made them government buildings or council buildings or offices or something because they don't know what to do with them. And it's kind of like, let me look at this thing.
The finite ingenuity in the details. It's like we can't do that today.
No. I mean, this is an example of one. And this burnt down. Here's evidence of it. It burnt down in the 40s. So they just got rid of the thing. And now it's replaced with a giant, horrible glass cube building that sells suits, I think, or something like that. This is an old town hall here in Britain, one of the Britain City, and it's beautiful. The thing is incredible, you know, and the narrative makes no sense. But you'll find the old burnt down. A lot of these buildings mysteriously burnt down in like the early and late 18th, 19th centuries, you know what I mean? And it's just
almost like they were getting rid of them.
One fire after another, because they don't match the narrative. They don't, you know, and especially in America, you're a new nation, supposedly, right? You shouldn't have cathedrals, okay? They shouldn't be
1,000%. Like the one that burned down in New York.
Exactly. They don't belong. You haven't been there long enough, you know? And I suppose into our narrative, it took 700 years to build this cathedral, you know? And it's kind of, the story is bunk.
None of it matches. It doesn't match. And all I'm asking for my audience is to just ask questions. That's it. And I know that my audience, maybe in the beginning, were very skeptical and like, I'm not going to watch this. But now that they've watched this, you have to question it.
It's up for debate. I understand. We haven't got all the answers. Not everything is ironed out and perfected and understood yet. But we have some answers for a lot of questions, and we're still trying to figure out others. I encourage anyone, get involved, get in on it, you know, help us and understand. If you've been inspired by this, come join the community and get involved. And we're not a monolith. We don't agree on everything, you know, and we're just trying to figure this out, working backwards from the foundation, the biblical foundation that Christ was literal. He meant what he said. And like I said, with that new perspective, world events suddenly change. Everything changes, you know. World War I finally makes sense. And the destruction of all this old world architecture suddenly comes into focus, you know. The most beautiful cities in Germany were just wiped off the map. Completely destroyed. Dresden.
Maybe that was the whole purpose.
Dresden was incredible. Dresden was the most beautiful city on the earth, as it was dubbed, and it was just turned into rubble. Gone. and we'll never be able to experience that, you know. But you look at old photos of this place, and it's just unbelievable.
Magnificent.
Yeah, unbelievable. And it's kind of the people who were, you know, dying of the plague and dysentery and were uninspired and under the thumb of Catholic Christendom and basically couldn't read and all this type of stuff, and were throwing the crap out into the streets, built these things, you're telling me? It's kind of no. Even the people were not what we're told. They weren't backwards. They weren't ignorant. They weren't stupid. They were highly intelligent, highly inspired, highly skilled. And we are just squatting, shall I say, in the remnants of what they built for us. And we have only gotten worse since then. Everything has decayed significantly. All of our standards are gone since this time.
Yeah, humanity is just de-evolving.
Yeah, we are not. I think that's Dresden, is it? I'm not sure. But look, just look at this thing. No matter where you looked, it was beauty. You know, and I don't get that same feeling walking down my city's high street today. Everything's shut down. Everything decayed. Everything looks the
same.
Everything's a pawn shop. You know what I mean? Everything's
exactly.
Everything's just cash and carry stuff. It's all terrible now and significantly getting worse. And look at the size of these doors they were building for people as well.
Like giants, right? Almost like.
Well, the saints might have been giants in their perfected bodies, you know. And I understand, you know, you might need to
let it. How small those people are. They would have never thought to build something like that.
I've heard one argument which is reasonable, is that horses, first of all, needed to get through sometimes. Okay. And also, if you wanted to let in a draft or something like that, or you'd open a very big door in a building that you couldn't.
Meanwhile, it was just that tombstone, and it's like, but here's wooden saloons and just, you know what I mean? It's just, come on, man.
Well, people don't realize, you know,
horse and buggy,
the Wild West story, you know, where people were living in saloons and wooden things. At the same time in Europe, these were built and everywhere. Right. So it's kind of like people don't realize that. I think they don't understand. It's kind of, they could have built better than the story they gave us, but they're trying to create this illusion that we have come so far since that time, you know. And look at this thing. This is buried Roman.
And that would go with evolution.
Yeah. But we're always digging stuff like this up. Underneath cities that we've built are more city that we just don't use anymore, you know? And it's because everything was buried at some point due to some enormous cataclysm. And we don't talk about it really. But look at these things. I know. I mean, some of these drawings as well. And I'm sad. I'm sad I didn't get to live during this time and see these things. I think that's Dresden. A beautiful place, a beautiful time.
And then you got to think, if we're looking at that, the remnants of that, what kind of technology were they using? I mean, yeah, we have internet today, and people are going to say, well, we have internet today. But who knows what they were using back then?
Oh, exactly. I'm not saying it would have been this. They were advanced in different ways than us. Do you get what I mean? They didn't have iPads.
They didn't need internet, probably. No. You know?
No, they didn't. I mean, they had everything they needed and any knowledge and any information they could have understood at their fingertips, probably just through some kind of telepathic ether technology of some kind. It would have been a completely different world. Or you want to know something? Go ask the saint. Go ask the local saint that's ruling over the region, who's literally got a main line to God himself. It's kind of...
Or maybe everyone was just tapped in, you know, and they...
Maybe
they were able. That's why they were able to use their creativity and just build what they want.
Maybe. I mean, I can only speculate, but it's fun to speculate. That's what I do. I do a lot of speculating, you know. But I also bring, like I said, a lot of facts, and I think this is a completely biblically grounded theory. This is not just made up and pulled out of thin air. Somebody has to live in the little season. It could be us, and if you don't think you can be deceived, you're not paying attention to the world we're living in today.
I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I'm all about that, Paul. Yeah. I am impressed, brothers. I am impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. Like I said, this
is incredible, man. I mean, look, it begs the question. That's all we're doing is raising questions. That's it. And I'm really imploring my audience to just look into this. Just look into it. I think this is a fascinating podcast, and I am so happy I did this. I'm so glad that Eddie sent me your info, and we were able to kick this off because you did not, you didn't upset, bro. You did great. It was amazing. Like,
thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to people and spread this idea. I mean, I'm just an idiot who doesn't know when to shut up. That's all I am, you know.
Anytime someone comes on and just kind of stumps me, and I just look at it and I go, yeah, I just love to learn. And then that's what you did today. So at least you did that, and I hope you did that with my audience. And hey, don't leave any stone unturned. That's all I'm saying. Let's look at all of it.
Absolutely.
And I know for a fact, one thing I know for a fact, we've been lied to. Okay, boom, there it is.
That's it.
Paul, thank you for coming on. Once again, where do people go to find you?
Yeah, you can find me at YouTube. That's where I'm based. I avoid Twitter like the plague because it's just full of degenerates and I hate the damn platform. But you can find me on YouTube.
Am I a degenerate? Yeah, I guess
you're one of the good ones, but the rest of it's a cesspool, you know. But but don't bother with any of that platform. Just go straight to YouTube. That's where you'll find me. Understanding Conspiracy. I showed you my channel earlier. Just look for the logo. You can see it on my microphone, and I have many playlists discussing many ideas. I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm focusing on this right now because this is where my research has led me. But I also authored a book called The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. I was predominantly known as that guy for a while doing the podcast circuit, and that's not as crazy as it sounds. It's an exploration of spiritual warfare and demonology. So go check that out if you haven't already.
Yeah, let's talk about that on the next one if you want to do another one.
I'll blow your mind again, David.
That'd be huge. I'd like to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm game to talk about that anytime. So there you go. Understanding Conspiracy. Come check it out. And I do have a Telegram group of the same name if you're interested too. It's a tight community and we're always sharing information on there together, and it's good fun. We have a meme section as well and all sorts of things on there. But that's all I can really say. Just come check it out. And I should say this more. I am on any podcast format as well. Any show I do is on there too. So if you're not into the visuals, you can go get the audio only on anywhere you get your podcast from.
Paul, thank you so much for joining me, folks. Give him a follow. This is incredible stuff. I loved it. Groundbreaking stuff. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you.
Thanks, David. God bless.
I want you to get together.